this is the panel discussion for the future of Latin America and Europe research infrastructure collaborations. So welcome to the panel here. I'm Susan Daenke, and I coordinate the RI-VIS project, which is co-organizer of this symposium. And I also have a role in Instruct ERIC, which is the European Research Infrastructure in Structural Biology, where I coordinate the Instruct Central Hub, which is located in Oxford in the UK. So this panel discussion follows from the one yesterday on opportunities for Latin America, European collaborations between research infrastructures, and also the one earlier today on expanding partnerships. So we now have some insights that we can start to consider what the future might be and how we can achieve that. We all accept, I think, that international cooperation and technology is an important part of addressing major global issues, and that research infrastructures are organizations that are set up to provide the means to develop and implement those solutions. But because these challenges don't respect borders, national borders, fostering international partnerships to achieve a coherent strategy to tackle these issues is really the only way to success. We've also recognized the need to work together to establish essential components that underpin these collaborations, such as we've just heard in some previous presentations in the last session, improved digital infrastructure that enables efficient data management, and also the importance of including alignment of regulatory policies that determine data use. So there's still a lot to do to get alignment between various participants in this cooperative initiative. Opportunities which tend to be identified using bottom-up approaches, that is, opportunities for collaboration. These go hand in hand with the support needed to develop them into real achievements. But this support tends to come from top-down approaches. I think this was mentioned in one of the presentations yesterday by Chris Wood, and he highlighted the need for both bottom-up and top-down approaches to come together in some way. So how are we going to make these collaborations happen? I feel from the presentations that we've already had and the discussions that we've heard yesterday and today, that there is real interest in establishing lasting cooperative relationships between Latin America and Europe. Perhaps we can focus on what we can achieve right now and work on what this can develop into and expand into for the future. Today, we're going to hear from 6 panelists. I will ask each to introduce themselves and give a short presentation or statement outlining the key ideas or issues they want to address. Then we will open up for discussion, so please put your questions in the chat or in the Q&A session for this session, and we'll try to get to these at the end. Just a reminder that we do have the translation available, so please bear with us if there is a short delay in the audio that you hear. So I'm going to start off with the first speaker, who I think in my list is Andrés López.
Okay, thank you, Susan. I'm here.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrés.
Bueno, muchas gracias por la
Thank you very much to be organized.
Con muchas participantes y bueno, todos con la misma idea y con la misma inquietud y esfuerzo de tratar de aumentar la colaboración entre ambos países. Es de verdad un evento muy bueno. Voy a hacer una breve presentación de Chile, de la institución, de la agencia de investigación, y luego voy a poner también algunos puntos sobre la cooperación, ¿ya? Voy a partir compartiendo pantalla.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Bueno, primero voy a hablar de unos aspectos generales no voy a estar más de 5 minutos, no se asusten. Los aspectos generales de la investigación en Chile, algunas formas que tenemos de financiar infraestructuras de investigación y otros también tipos de financiamiento relacionado. Bueno, Chile es un país muy largo y angosto, al final de Sudamérica, una población aproximadamente poco menos de 20 millones. Pertenecemos al Mercosur como asociado, a CELAC, a OECD, y tenemos una educación en ciencia donde un gran porcentaje de estudiantes en estudios superiores. Sin embargo, una muy baja gasto en investigación y desarrollo, uno de los más bajos de la OECD, 0,4 tenía acá en el 2016 y según el último reporte de la UNESCO que salió hace muy poco, estamos en un 0,35. Así que estamos muy bajos en ese punto, algo que evidentemente tenemos que ir mejorando. Y quienes en Chile quien conduce la investigación está muy concentrado en universidades, donde más del 80% de esta investigación se realiza en las universidades. Tenemos una dificultad muy grande, yo creo que es algo que tenemos común en los países de Latinoamérica, de incluir a la industria, a los privados dentro de este desarrollo. Rápidamente, algunas formas de financiamiento que tenemos de infraestructuras de investigación. Tenemos 6 diferentes tipos de llamados de concursos relacionados con infraestructuras de investigación. En este momento hay un total de 53 diferentes...
We have 53 institutions that receive funding. How do we work? Well, each of the institutions obtain finance for 10 years.
accediendo nuevamente para ir renovándolo. Y damos financiamiento por aproximadamente entre 1 millón y 2 millones de euros por año, totalizando entre 10 y 20 millones de euros en total. Y la diferencia entre los diferentes 6 tipos de financiamiento se relacionan con focalización en algunas áreas específicas o en más cercano o más lejano a ciencia aplicada, o también en la diferencia de quienes pueden aplicar. Por ejemplo, hay uno de ellos que es para instituciones extranjeras. Tenemos acá Fraunhofer, el INRIA, CESAIRO, entre otros, que tienen acá un hub de sus casas matrices. Y tenemos uno de ellos que es el de servicios, que tiene más cercano a cumplir con las definiciones que todos conocemos de infraestructuras de investigación, un acceso abierto, más cercano al ofrecimiento con tarifas, con todo de servicios relacionados. Luego también tenemos las instituciones públicas relacionadas con infraestructuras de investigación, que reciben sus fondos directamente desde el presupuesto nacional. Entre estos se destaca el Instituto Antártico Nacional, la Comisión Chilena de Energía Nuclear, otros relacionados con agropecuario, también con salud y finalmente, dentro de los destacados, hay más el servicio de geología y de minería, que en Chile es muy importante por el tema del cobre principalmente, y de los volcanes y de eso. Otros programas de financiamiento que también existen en Chile, está el de equipamiento, esto lo voy a pasar más rápido, donde donde universidades pueden, acá voy a retroceder una anterior, ahí sí, donde pueden postular universidades, se da equipamiento que tenga un costo superior a los 70.000 euros, con un costo menor. El máximo que damos nosotros es cercano a 1.100.000 de euros. Pedimos que haya un cofinanciamiento de parte de la contraparte, del postulante. Damos financiamiento para el equipamiento para el transporte, para los seguros, y hemos dado en 10 años un total cercano a 80 millones de euros en financiamiento de equipamientos. Tenemos una plataforma donde uno puede acceder a estos equipamientos y puede ver en qué parte están, cuáles son, ponerse en contacto con quienes los manejan. Y uno de los temas de aprendizaje dentro de estar dentro de este grupo de trabajo, bueno, eso no me presenté ni siquiera. Bueno, soy parte del grupo de trabajo de infraestructuras de investigación desde el inicio, desde el 2007, y también parte del grupo del proyecto ResInfra. Y una de las cosas que hemos sacado, que al menos yo de aprendizaje, es como, por ejemplo, este fondo que depende del departamento que yo lidero, hemos ido haciendo algunos cambios. Por ejemplo, desde el año pasado, que incluimos que estos equipos estén abiertos a la comunidad, tanto nacional como extranjera, por un tiempo determinado, por un tiempo limitado de tiempo, siguiendo un poco el ejemplo de Eric, que son equipos que van más o menos de la mano en cuanto a magnitud, y también buscando esta forma de mantenerlos y de abrirlos a la comunidad de una forma abierta hacia ellos. ¿Qué tipos de equipamientos? Microscopios, plataformas atmosféricas, robots, boyas oceanográficas, difractómetros, microscopios, telescopios, sismógrafos, cámaras acústicas, cámaras de perfil atmosféricas, lisímetros, mognes, ROVs, gliders, diferentes tipos de equipos. Y ya estoy terminando. Tenemos también diferentes formas de fondos que también ayudan a promover la colaboración con otros. Tenemos fondos que permiten el movimiento de investigadores, ¿ya? Donde damos también fondos por cerca de 25.000 euros, donde evidentemente podríamos focalizarlo de alguna manera mejor a como lo estamos haciendo actualmente, que es de libre demanda. Y bueno, para ir terminando y dejar el punto para el resto de los colegas y tal vez volver sobre esto después, hablamos de futuro y quería simplemente entrar a cosas que ya hemos venido haciendo. Está el roadmap de EU-LAC Science and Technology Cooperation, donde es un documento que existe, donde también vemos como el Research Infrastructure es una de las áreas dentro foco de este roadmap, que es un documento que ya está publicado y tal. También relacionado con esto mismo está el EU-LAC Cooperation Research Infrastructure, las formas para seguir adelante. Dentro de esto se da distintos puntos que estoy acá destacando, como poner en contacto a las personas con ResInfra, proyecto en el cual participo, RI-VIS, veo que es parte de lo que estamos tratando de hacer. Análisis de los Research Infrastructure Landscape, también estamos avanzando en eso. O sea, veo cosas que de repente no entrar está bien tener siempre nuevas ideas, pero también empezar a hacer acciones sobre las ideas que ya hemos ido avanzando, y en eso también estamos bien enfocados con el proyecto. También hacer mención al white paper de RI-VIS, donde también hay distintos puntos que se plantean para ir avanzando en esta colaboración, en este futuro de la colaboración entre ambos continentes. Y me pasé un poco. Solo para terminar, en Latinoamérica, y esta ya es la última slide, yo creo que tenemos mucho que aprender de distintos proyectos, de distintas cosas que ya se han ido avanzando. Entre estos destaco también el reporte final o el proyecto de InRoad, donde hay mucha información sobre cómo ir avanzando en los diferentes roadmaps que nosotros como tarea tenemos en Latinoamérica, sobre ir ordenando nuestras infraestructuras. Por ahí México tiene realizó un libro hace un tiempo que va de la mano con esto, pero nos falta mucho en cuanto a homologarnos, a ir avanzando de manera conjunta en esto. Y especie de Gantt que pongo acá también es para demostrar que no es hablamos mucho a veces en Latinoamérica y como que estamos tan lejanos en todo esto con Europa, y acá simplemente quería demostrar cómo y en una parte del proyecto y que tuvimos la ocasión que el coordinador de INRO también nos demostrara en una sesión sobre esto, de cómo los roadmaps en Europa no es algo que tenga una historia tan larga ni que sea desde hace mucho tiempo, y partió desde una iniciativa que ESFRI lideró, y cómo de ahí en adelante han ido actualizando los roadmaps desde ESFRI, y cómo esto ha ido moviendo a que los diferentes países también vayan avanzando en esto. Dentro de esto, como una ambición que podríamos llegar a hacer dentro del grupo de trabajo que participamos de este grupo de trabajo SWOT, sería tratar de avanzar en algo similar y moverlo nosotros desde el grupo de trabajo hacia los países miembros. Es como una ambición, es como un sueño que podríamos ir tratando de centrar. Eso es lo que tenía para mostrarles. Gracias.
Thank you very much, Andrés. Very interesting perspective from Chile. So if we move on now, and our next speaker is Inmaculada Figueroa. Inmaculada is a member of SFRI. She's vice chair of SFRI, and she coordinates the EU-LAC ResInfra project. She's also a member of the Internationalization of Science and Innovation section of the Ministry of Sciences and Innovation in Spain. So if Inmaculada is available, the floor is yours. So if you want to share your screen, Inmaculada, if you have a presentation, that would be great.
Well, I was trying to share, but I am in the iPad instead in the computer, and I think that it's going to make difficult to do it. So I am going to, well, first I would like to see me.
Okay.
So first of all, I wanted to say that I work for the Ministry of Science and Innovation. I am I was the technologist as engineering because I am engineer in one of the center of Spain related to aerospace technology for 17 years, and then I moved to the Ministry of Science and Innovation for working with research infrastructures. In Spain, the research infrastructures are organized in different layers. Depending on the Ministry of Science and Innovation, we have the research centers like CIEMAT, the Research Council, el Instituto de Salud Carlos III, that is the research infrastructure, the research organization devoted to health, in all the issues related with health, and the Instituto of Astrophysica of Canary Island, that it is for astronomy. Also, depending on the Ministry of Science and Innovation, we have all the infrastructure that are considered national infrastructures, and we have two different units in the ministry working with the research infrastructures. We have the one unit that it is the responsible for the national infrastructure. In Spain, we have a well-established network of national research infrastructures that are infrastructure that are distributed along all the territory of Spain, and are funded by the national government, but also by the regional government. And there is a special committee, a high-level committee composed by the ministries of the regional governments and our ministries that define the strategies in relation with these infrastructures. Not only with these infrastructures, but also, but they are also responsible for the infrastructures. This is the layers in which we support our participation in the international organization and in the European organization. In international organization, Spain is a member of the biggest international organization. Spain participating as member in CERN, in EMBL, in ESRF, ILL, ISO, European Southern Observatory, and many others. And also we are part of SWOT, as mentioned by Susan. And as such, we are, as I have opportunity during these days to explain you, to participate together with our colleagues of the other member states in the construction of these infrastructures that we are constructing together for creating this landscape that is necessary for offering these tools to our researchers, for providing this, for producing this research of frontier that is needed. In this sense, we spent in the budget of the ministry, we spent a big amount of money for research infrastructures, in particular, for instance, for the international ones, only for this big infrastructure, like I mentioned, CERN, ISO, and etc. We have more than 200 million in our budget for paying these contributions. We participate in the S3 research infrastructures in a different schemes. So there is part of the money for the contribution and the construction of the research infrastructure that is directly in our budget, but there is also part of this budget that is coming from the interested institutions that are participating in as national nodes, for instance, or as users of the infrastructure in some cases. And also we participate through in-kind contribution, and this in-kind contribution, for instance, for this big infrastructure like the European Spallation Source, for instance, a big amount of the contribution of Spain for being part of this infrastructure is paid by this by the development of technologies and equipments at national level, and that we finally deliver to the research infrastructure to be part of the final machine that is going to be part of the big infrastructure that is, in the case of ESS, is going to be constructed in, or is under construction in Lund, in Sweden. So there is different ways to participate. In this case, we also are funded by our agencies. We have two agencies depending on the ministry. We have the National State Agency, that it is the ones that is funding research, and they have special lines also for helping to fund the research infrastructures. For instance, equipment for the different nodes of the research infrastructure in Spain. And also CDTI. CDTI is the center, it's our innovation agency. And in the case of the in-kind contribution, they have special programs in which they are allowed to fund our industry in order to help to construct this equipment, these elements that are the way in which we contribute to this infrastructure. So this is a bit an idea of how we participate in these in the infrastructures. Going to the European, with my European profile, just to mention that S3, as I have opportunity to say in previous occasion, I think it has proved that it is a good experience that we have developed now or the next year, working 20 years together. And for sure, always we need to improve. But this is something that we want to put in value now with this collaboration that we are having with the LAC region, in order to exchange experiences and to construct, not from the scratch, but from the existing experiences. We have already a good network of research infrastructure that are open to the third countries to join us as member, as associate partners, as strategic partners, as institutions through special agreements. They are open for access for the researchers from the Latin American countries. They are open also for this program of exchange and for training of staff and managers. and we participate in different projects that are dealing with us, like Retrain. And we have to put in value also that all of this is possible because we have a decision to work together with you, that there is a decision from the Commission to put money and to fund the project that are helping us to do it. What we have found in this time that in which we are working together is that we have some asymmetries that was put in the table in the last days, but there are asymmetries that we can solve easily. That what we need to have is the willingness to work together, the willingness to support the research infrastructures, the intention to share information, to share means, and to find a way to join resources that in many cases is not a big amount of money, because there are a lot of things that we can do without even money. But there is a lot to do together, and I think that we are ready, and we are proving with this event and with the work that we are doing through ResInfra and the working group on research infrastructure that the collaboration with Latin America is here, and we can and the only thing that we can do is increase this collaboration from now on. Thank you.
Okay, so let's move on now to Manoel Barral-Netto. I'm sorry, Manoel, I know you have to leave shortly, so we'll give you the floor straight away. Please share your screen.
Okay, good morning, and thank you for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to be part of this discussion. I unfortunately have really to leave before the end of the roundtable, but what I would like, it's in some way, the point that I'm going to raise first is really on what is really infrastructure and the need for that for the area of the case that I'm going to discuss a little bit is really personalized medicine in the context of collaboration with Europe that is in the International Consortium of Personalized Medicine and the EU-LAC for Personalized Medicine. And then besides the physical infrastructure, what else we need? And in this line, I'm going to touch bases with some of the points raised by Damian just before. And one point is that in our case, in personalized medicine, the big infrastructure, physical infrastructure that is needed is really related to databases that are, of course, a requirement in all areas of science now, so it's nothing particular to personalized medicine. And they tend, the problem tends to be outside the physical aspects only. Of course, this is not resolved in Latin America. We still have lots of problems in having enough space in terms of clouds and everything to really manage large databases. If you think in terms of personalized medicine, including images and all the examination that is made today in medicine with images, that is takes a lot of space in terms of this aspect. And also, even if we just keep with genomics, there is already large data banks that are really necessary to consider. But I think that most of our problems in the cooperation with Europe is, or anywhere else, not only Europe, is really related with data protection in terms of we are dealing with very sensitive information about individuals. We have so much information that it's really even difficult to be completely sure that it's completely anonymized. So it's really a problem that we have really to discuss a lot. The Brazilian law of personal data protection is very similar to the European one, but there is differences in cultural differences and the interpretations of the law. The text of the law is not really always pacific. And also there are differences between countries in Latin America. I'm not an expert in law. I cannot, really expand much on that, but it's different. So beside the cultural difference, there are legal differences. So for a proper function of this infrastructure, we have really to do with a lot of ethical, legal, and social aspects that are really important to put in the table. So it's not only having the infrastructures that's going to solve the problem. It's necessary to also tackle so many different aspects that is important to be aware of that. This is sometimes the problem is a little bit easier in Brazil now, but we use it to have problems in participating with large-scale clinical trials because our ethical analysis is so slow that most of the analysis were, the patient's enrollment was already completed when the approval was given to the Brazilian sites, potential sites. So it's totally, outside the physical infrastructure, but it's in the context of the collaboration, this is critical really to address. And so this is also one point that we shall consider in this program to fostering collaboration. And beside these ELSA aspects that, as a matter of fact, both ICPERMED, the International Consortium, and the program, the EU-LAC both have attention for these aspects. I'm not saying that we're not dealing with that, but what I'm saying that is, so much intricated with infrastructure, physical infrastructure, that is necessary really to have a lot of attention to these aspects. And the other aspect that I'm talking mainly as a Brazilian perspective, but I imagine that is not totally different in other parts of Latin America, is really the aspects of capacity building. So it's not necessary only to have the instruments or the physical places to perform, but to have, of course, we're not talking much of this aspect in personalized medicine cannot be totally centralized in a very large infrastructure. We have really to have this dispersed among the countries, just to, and the whole region, of course. So, this problem in Brazil is large enough. Imagine if we think in terms of Latin America and Caribbean countries, that is really, a large part, a large distance and different aspects to deal with in terms of capacity building. So, of course, in Brazil, most of the human resources for high quality science is concentrated in the southeast part of the country. And in many areas with very interesting questions to be asked in terms of genetic heterogeneity and things like that, that could be very attractive to understanding personalized medicine, are in areas with not much people really prepared to deal with the very modern approaches in terms of science. So capacity building is also another important issue here, both in terms of data science, because personalized medicine is a combination of large data banks in several aspects of medicine. So then I'll come to the last point that I'm going to raise, that most of the challenge is really in terms of data integration and interoperability. So this is most of the time the big challenge is really concentrated in these aspects, and not only on having the data, but having the possibility of integrating data that were not prepared or collected, thinking in terms of putting everything together. And the last point really is really that if we think in terms of personalized medicine is already a big issue, but medicine is not all health. If we really think in health, we have to incorporate some aspects of education, income, and environment that heavily influences health of the population. So if we really move from personalized medicine to precision public health, we're dealing with integrating even more complex data in terms of different possibilities. So I'm really, just raising these points that we are, of course, talking a lot with our friends in other countries here and with the European colleagues in the both IC permit and EU-LAC permit. But these are really big challenges that we have really to think more broadly than just as physical infrastructure. It's much more related to other aspects of infrastructure. Okay, thank you. And I'll try to remain up to the last minute, but then, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Manoel. Thank you. Okay, so we have another of our speakers who is also perhaps short of time. So should we move on now to Lelio Fellows-Filho? And he is Head of International Affairs Unit at the National Council for Scientific and Technological Development in Brazil. So Lelio, if you are with us, you have the floor.
Okay. Are you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Your slide is not in presentation mode. We see your settings. Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
That is. Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you in this very interesting and unique event. And I will pay attention with the time in order to have more time to discuss that is supposed to be afterwards. So just a few words about the National Council of Science and Technology. I suppose that it is quite familiar for most of you. This is the largest funding agency in science and technology in Brazil, and also the oldest one. We are now celebrating our 70th anniversary, 7-0. So it's a quite long time that we are dealing with the science and technology in Brazil for a long time. And then I myself is a member of Science and Technology Council for a long time. And I'm dealing with international cooperation also for a long time, dealing with future issues. That is why this presentation will be more concentrated in these aspects. So this means that I will try to discuss with you, to share with you some principles on the issues regarding to futures in our possible cooperation, increasing our cooperation between our two regions. So it's just to mention a little bit of what are in this presentation, what are recovered, just some principles, what are research infrastructures, and take into consideration what the friend Barral said some minutes ago. They are not only concentrated in physical issues, but all the questions regarding to data facilities and aspects, and also all that could help and be important of the development of the researchers and the scientific development is, in our case, we consider as research infrastructures. It's important that just to recover that the European research area was launched in 2000, so it's a long time that it was established. And the European Strategy Forum for Research Infrastructure, the S3, was launched in 2002. So this shows how it's not important, the idea of research infrastructure for the European Union, but also how the continuity of this central aspect is being in discussion. And also the ERIC for since 2008. Next slide, please. So we have, in our case, in the question, in the relationship among Europe and the Latin American countries, we have this regional cooperation I just want to mention 2 milestones. 2010, that was established the first aspects and discussions on the generation of the European and Latin American country knowledge area as a priority for the 2 regions under the ongoing EU-LAC GIRI. And it was established, this EU-LAC common area, in 2015. So it's quite young, if we can say something like this. We are experiencing this understanding of a common area of science and technology. And it's important that this project, ResInfra, EU-LAC ResInfra, was started in December 2019. So it's a little baby. Next, please. It's just mentioned that it's central point for, it was central for most of time, and it is really central in the days that we are living now. The international collaboration, since the understanding that the development and the scientific, and most of the scientific development, most of all globalized. The knowledge doesn't obey exactly borders or something like this, so it's much more than ever globalized. So it's much, this is provide to us that is the international collaboration, a central point that we can discuss. Next one, please. This is just a mention of this recent white paper that was produced by the RI-VIS. It is important to know that the collective global knowledge and experience is necessary to harness, support leverage of new international funding for RIs, and most of aspects that was already discussed in this prior presentation that we have, not only this panel, but the other ones. Next one. And this brings me to the thing that I would like maybe to spend some minutes more, is the SWOT analysis that was produced in this work done by the ResInfra EU-LAC, that shows us what are the questions, the central questions that we would like to maybe address in order to establish a more fruitful cooperation between the 2 regions in terms of research, the research infrastructures, considering the research infrastructures as a broad concept. I think that I just want to like to point out some aspects, some points that I think that is crucial in order to guarantee that it's possible for the future to have this cooperation more and more productive. One thing is what is considered as a weakness, the lack of clustering and the lack of formal ties among research infrastructures. In all the aspects that is considered now as a weakness, our challenge is to change this with actions, formal actions from the political aspects and for the scientific people aspects, to change this into opportunities. Then, if we can move these, if we can use this traditional question regarding to SWOT analysis, is we can take this weakness and move it to opportunities. We can then have a new way, a new, how can I say, horizon to be open to establish some important possibilities for us to move from a part that we have in our situation in Latin American countries. We have isolated very important infrastructures in order to have this in a more, how can I say, more network established infrastructure, research infrastructure, and most of them linked in order to become a new approach for this kind of infrastructures in Latin America, in order to develop this kind of possible situation, exploring the situation that we have in the continent in order to increase the results of important investigation for both areas from Latin American and Europe. The next one, I think that's the last one. So there are some findings that we have from this work package 2 of the ResInfra project. And I think that the best approach for RI collaboration shall be bottom up, bringing RIs together, promoting collaboration and showcasing successful examples. The scope of purpose of the collaboration must be clear, important to clarify to the scientific community the distinction between RI collaboration and research collaboration. This brings me back the aspects that Barral mentioned some minutes ago. The visibility of existing collaboration and the involvement of the country should be further promoted, raise the awareness of existing activity. And one aspect that is very important mainly in the LAC area is the universities should be more involved in this promotion of this account for more than 2/3 of the scientific production that are made in these areas. The identification of common interests and priorities in both regions to materialize potential collaboration and make the best use of RIs of both regions. So that is all for the moment, and I thank you once more for the attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lelio. Thank you for your presentation. So I think we should move swiftly on to our final speaker, who is Raquel Hurtado-Ortiz, who is head of the National Biobank of Microorganisms at the Institut Pasteur in Paris.
Bueno, entonces, como les decía, voy a cambiar al español. Solamente que me estoy oyendo también en inglés. Bueno, no importa. Bueno, como les mencionaba, en este caso, yo quiero empezar diciendo que mi nombre es Raquel Hurtado-Ortiz, soy la directora de la Colección Nacional de Cultivos de Microorganismos, que es una colección o banco de microorganismos asociados a procesos de patente. También participo en el proyecto RI-VIS. De hecho, represento a la infraestructura europea de investigación MIRI en este proyecto y junto también con los colegas de Bélgica, de Belspo. Bueno, entonces mi experiencia, así también como la de mis colegas, se centra en los centros de recursos microbianos, también conocidos como colecciones de microorganismos. Y en algunas ocasiones se les conoce o se les llama también biobancos de microorganismos. Estas colecciones o centros de recursos microbianos son repositorios de microorganismos vivos y también contienen información asociada a este material biológico. Entonces, dentro de esta información asociada, pues se puede contener, por ejemplo, bases de datos de alguna información, por ejemplo, molecular, fisiológica, Y también nosotros ahora hablamos de la información sobre secuencias digitales. Sin embargo, algo muy importante que hay que destacar de estos centros de recursos microbianos es que también ofrecen servicios. Entonces, de acuerdo
Raquel.
debido a la enorme diversidad de estos centros, las
Raquel, ¿te podré
colecciones pueden
interrumpir
estar
tantito?
especializadas.
Bueno, entonces les mencionaba que en el caso del Instituto Pasteur, nosotros colaboramos juntos en una estructura central que se conoce como Centro de Recursos Biológicos del Instituto Pasteur, y en el cual se encuentran también, por ejemplo, la colección de bacterias, una colección de cianobacterias, y la colección nacional, que es asociada a procesos de patente, que es la que actualmente estoy dirigiendo. Entonces, bueno, para no tomar mucho tiempo, porque ya tomé más de lo debido con estos problemas técnicos, bueno, como les mencioné, participo también en la infraestructura de investigación MIRI, que es una infraestructura de investigación de recursos microbiológicos. Y esta es una infraestructura de investigación europea que tiene como objetivo, se enfoca en la preservación, en la investigación sistemática, en la provisión y la valorización de los recursos microbianos, así como también de la biodiversidad. En este caso, bueno, ustedes ven aquí del lado izquierdo el mapa y pueden ver todos los países que forman parte de esta infraestructura.
Which are part of this infrastructure. Right now, we have...
Que forman parte, bueno, Centro de Recursos Microbianos y colecciones también de microorganismos y otros institutos de investigación que forman parte de esta infraestructura. La sede actualmente está en Portugal y también existe una subsede o un centro que se encuentra, el centro informático que se encuentra en España. Actualmente esta infraestructura está apoyada por otro proyecto, también financiado por la Comisión Europea, que es el proyecto IS-MIRI 21, el cual tiene como objetivo trabajar en la implementación de la infraestructura MIRI. Entonces, también como ustedes ven en la parte derecha, este es, digamos, que el corazón de la infraestructura MIRI, que se enfoca, digamos, en 4 principales ejes. Se tiene en el centro lo que se conoce como el ambiente de trabajo colaborativo, y tiene los principales ejes a los que se enfoca esta infraestructura, son un catálogo, digamos, un punto central de acceso al material biológico, que sería un catálogo de MIRI. Se tiene también, por ejemplo, el catálogo de servicios, porque les mencioné que es muy importante que la oferta de servicios, y también se tiene un acceso a grupos de expertos en diferentes temáticas. Y otra parte también muy importante es el acceso a la formación y a los cursos, no solamente para las personas que tienen los utilizadores, digamos, de estos servicios, sino también para la academia, la industria y otros sectores. Entonces, bueno, en esta parte les puse un ejemplo de lo que ya se ha hecho o ya se tiene como colaboraciones con América Latina. Entonces, en lo que se ha desarrollado antiguamente en colaboraciones con América Latina, se enfoca principalmente en el apoyo y en la consultoría para la creación, por ejemplo, de redes nacionales de diferentes centros de recursos biológicos, como es el caso, por ejemplo, tenemos experiencia con Brasil, y también con Chile. En el caso de Brasil, que está también en construcción o ya muy adelantada esta formación de esta red de centros de recursos biológicos, y en Chile también. Y también se tienen ciertas experiencias enfocadas en el intercambio de información acerca de regulaciones tanto nacionales como internacionales. Entonces, aquí en el lado derecho les puse un ejemplo de lo que nuestros colegas en Chile ya han avanzado para formar esta red. Y creo que en este punto es interesante mencionar, porque ayer tuvimos una discusión muy interesante con respecto a qué se debería reforzar primeramente. Si es reforzar, digamos, redes a nivel nacional y luego colaborar con, por ejemplo, en este caso, con las infraestructuras en Europa, o que no necesariamente se necesita reforzar a nivel nacional las redes de las diferentes estructuras, sino que cada una de esas infraestructuras puede colaborar directamente con infraestructuras en Europa. Yo creo que en estos dos puntos, ambas propuestas son igualmente válidas, se puede trabajar en ambos puntos, porque en este caso, por ejemplo, con Latinoamérica, hablando de las colecciones de microorganismos, ya existen, incluso antes del establecimiento de MIRRI, ya existían otros proyectos europeos que ya trabajaban también como consorcio en Europa y que ya empezaban a tener esas relaciones con colecciones en Latinoamérica. Y más aún, por ejemplo, aquí lo que quiero, digamos, destacar es que, si bien es cierto, como ustedes lo pueden ver en el mapa, cuando hablamos de Latinoamérica, estamos hablando desde el punto de vista de territorio, de un enorme territorio que comprende los diferentes países de Latinoamérica. Entonces, también por las condiciones geográficas de todos los países, pues podemos imaginar que, por ejemplo, el área de Europa, prácticamente estamos hablando del área, por ejemplo, de México y Centroamérica, y eso es, digamos que geográficamente podríamos tener ciertos baches operacionales que puedan de alguna manera, en algunas ocasiones, impedir, sobre todo cuando hablamos de la movilidad y otras cosas. Entonces, bueno, ese es un ejemplo que les menciono, que es lo que Chile ya ha hecho en cuanto a fortalecer estas redes. Y también, pues ya se tienen, por ejemplo, algunas federaciones u organizaciones, como en este caso la FELAC, que es la Federación Latinoamericana de Colecciones de Cultivo. Y entonces ya se tiene este antecedente para poder seguir fortaleciendo los vínculos colaborativos con las infraestructuras en Europa. Entonces, bueno, las colaboraciones en este aspecto creo que se deben de centrar, como ya lo mencioné, en este ambiente de trabajo colaborativo. Y aquí en por ejemplo, desde el punto de vista de MIRRI, se han identificado diferentes áreas que son las áreas que forman parte del plan estratégico de MIRRI para el futuro. Entonces vemos que una de las áreas está enfocada en la salud y en la alimentación. Otra que también se sobrepone un poco, una parte de alimentación y la parte de agricultura, agropecuaria, por ejemplo. Y la otra parte que es igualmente importante, que se enfoca al ambiente y energía. Y bueno, yo en esta parte menciono que puede ser muy importante enfocar estas futuras colaboraciones con América Latina, tomando, por ejemplo, como punto de partida esta plataforma que se está ya organizando en el proyecto de la infraestructura MIRRI, para poder acceder más fácilmente, no solamente al material microbiano, a las cepas de los diferentes microorganismos que existen, sino que también, por ejemplo, a cursos, a formaciones que se puedan ofrecer en esta parte. Hemos hablado también que es igualmente importante tomar en cuenta el acceso virtual, porque, pero no solamente el acceso virtual, sino también el acceso remoto. Creo que en los últimos tiempos hemos aprendido mucho sobre las experiencias por la pandemia por COVID-19 y a pesar de que, bueno, sigue siendo una manera más efectiva de, por ejemplo, la movilidad, es decir, ir a formarse, ir a aprender a los diferentes países, a los diferentes centros de investigación, pues eso sigue siendo relevante, pero no tenemos que dejar de lado este otro aprendizaje al utilizar las otras herramientas que nos permitan intercambiar, colaborar, utilizando el acceso virtual y el acceso remoto. En el caso específico de MIRI y de colecciones de cultivos de microorganismos, también creo que es importante colaborar sobre todo en las regulaciones, hablando, por ejemplo, del sistema de manejo de la calidad, el Quality Management System, porque pues hay también ciertas normas, como normas ISO, que están enfocadas específicamente en los biobancos, en las colecciones de microorganismos, y también, por ejemplo, en algunos procedimientos estándares para procedimientos de operación, que se pueden también empezar a compartir. Y algo muy importante que se mencionaba también en la discusión de ayer es que necesitamos ese enlace también, o ese compromiso de las autoridades en los diferentes países para poder fortalecer este tipo de colaboracionnes. Porque en muchas ocasiones, bueno, no es una generalización, pero se tienen diferentes iniciativas y ya existen, pero no se les da un camino para poder materializarse y sobre todo para poder ser sostenibles en el tiempo, es decir, que puedan ser operacionales en el futuro. Bueno, aquí solamente les quiero mencionar alguna información con respecto a la infraestructura, que es los sitios web de la infraestructura MIRI, el sitio web del proyecto, que es IS-MIRI 21, el correo electrónico y alguna otra información sobre las redes sociales que tiene este proyecto, y solamente para que ustedes vean la gran cantidad de miembros que actualmente forman parte de este consorcio y de los diferentes países en Europa. Gracias, sí, nuevamente una disculpa.
Thank you, Raquel, and our apologies for
Gracias, Raquel, y nos disculpamos nosotras por este problema.
Okay, so I think now we can go to the discussion, and there are a few questions that have popped up in the chat. There's one that is directed to Lelio Fellows, and this one is from a representative of the Laboratory of Science and Conservation in, I'm not quite sure where it's from, which country it's from. But what they say is that must be in Brazil, sorry. They say in Brazil, we have a branch of the European Research Infrastructures for Heritage Science, which is represented by a Brazilian network for research in technology and heritage science. How can we look for support in Brazil and within Latin America, since we already have a network of laboratories and facilities, but unlike the Europeans, we so far have not found possibilities for funding? Can I address that to Lelio? Could you respond to that one?
Yes, please, Susan. Thank you so much. I just want to ask the colleague that make these questions to get in touch directly with me. I think that my dates are available mainly email. And then that, since this is a very special question, very individual one, I think that is more adequate if he can establish direct contact with me. I'm completely open to receive this question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's interesting because the same person goes on to mention the importance of having political support and the importance also of getting access to those political channels. And I think we've heard a lot about regional organization of existing facilities and initiatives around Latin America. But I wonder whether, even though there is a motivation to organize these infrastructures regionally, is there the political will? How do you connect the two? How do you connect the scientific enthusiasm to do this with the political support that is necessary for this? How do you engage those two things?
It's for me, Susan, or for all the panel?
We can ask someone else if they would like to contribute.
Yeah, but I think that this is a question that is common for all of us that are dealing with the science and technology issues. And this is also central because the sensibility of the political sector is central in order to guarantee one that is important aspects for all the area, all the countries, that is funding for the science and technology, but especially in Latin America, is the continuity of the budget for the science and technology budget. We used to say, mainly in Brazil, and I think that in all Latin American countries, that sometimes it's much more important to have a guaranteed budget, not too high, but a guaranteed budget, instead of have very oscillating budget in terms of science and technology that become very difficult to planning for a long time, mainly important initiatives that needs very long time to start to produce results. So I think that it's central. In our case, we have special actions together with the Society for Advancement of Science and Academy of Science and all the members of the society representative, that we ask them to engage in these discussions with the parliament and in all the areas of the political issues.
Thank you. I wonder at this point, because it is important to have political support to do these things, and this is something that the EU has certainly addressed in the last 20 years or so of establishing the S3 research infrastructure landscape. And I wonder if we could ask Inma to comment on that, because she actually gave a very clear explanation of the political support required at the EU level to establish research infrastructures and the commitment that involves. So Inma, would you like to comment on that for us?
Yes. Yes. I think that the approach that we are following in Europe is it has double approach, because first it is clear that it's a decision, and this is something that we are trying to mobilize and you are trying to mobilize in LAC, is the willingness of the countries, the European countries that have decided that the research infrastructure are one of the pillars for constructing the European research area. The research infrastructures, we have several priorities for building the European research area, and one of these priorities is the research infrastructures. So the research infrastructure is already recognized by all our countries like our priority for constructing ERA and offering our researchers the tools that are needed for the production of this science of frontier science. This means that it was decided, and it's the council decision, the Council of Ministers of Ministers in Science in Europe, who decided to create ESFRI. So ESFRI is root of a decision of the Council of Ministers in the European Union, and it is composed by the members of the governments of the European Union countries. But finally, these policy officers are moved because there is a need, there is a request from the researchers. So there is no movement possible if there is not a clear request on the necessity to create these infrastructures from the side of the researchers. And this is the double approach that we are following in ESFRI. We have to have this willingness together for working for considering the research infrastructure like a priority for our science, technology, and innovation system in Europe. Then we have to offer service to our researchers. And in this sense is how we are working in Europe. And I think that this is something that we are trying to do now with our working group, in which you, Lelio, like Andrés, and like me, are member. And we are trying to do that. We are trying to bring together the policymakers at the ministerial and national funding agencies together in order to take this decision and to approach the views to recognize the value of the research infrastructure for constructing this common research area between the two regions. And this is the fruit of that is that the research infrastructure are considered like the pillar 4 of our GIRI, of our joint initiative on research and infrastructures. And fruit of that is the creation of this working group. This working group finally is the decision of implement this pillar. So we are in the good basis. We are in this is not a starting point because we are working already since 2017, I think, and these are the first steps. We need to continue. There are some questions in the question and answer from other partners, other participants about the possibilities to establish the possibility to create a workshop or to organize a workshop in order to better understand what ESFRI is doing. This is something that it is clear from the beginning in the working group. We have Andrés has presented the 2022 ICRI, and he mentioned the 2018 ICRI in Vienna, and it was our second meeting of the working group. And in this second meeting of the working group, we had the opportunity to have a workshop, a policy workshop, one of the activities that we have been developing. And this policy workshop was devoted to road mapping. And in this policy workshop, I remember that I was one of the speakers, together with David Bomer from the ESFRI, and both of us presented you the way in which the road mapping exercise is done in Europe in the context of ESFRI, and it's our intention to continue to do it. This is going to be done in the working group, and of course it's going to be supported by EU-LAC ResInfra. That is the project that is supporting all these activities. So this is the way that we are considering to go ahead with this collaboration. We are trying to better explain. The problem is that, as I mentioned yesterday, that all of us consider that all our research infrastructure, all our procedures are well known by everybody, and this process, there is a big necessity for information, for dissemination, because we see that there is a lot of interest, but there is still a lot of lack of information. And of course, we are ready to organize workshops. We are ready to see the ways in which everything can be clear in order to construct together. But we are in the good track. This is my feeling is that we are in the good track.
Good. I agree. Thank you. Thank you, Emma. I think there have been quite a few comments in the chat about communication and the possibilities of training and so on. And I think it is important to point out that the research infrastructures do more than just provide services, access to infrastructure. They support the research communities in lots of ways. And I think that is a sort of a collateral benefit of being part of a research infrastructure community like this, that it opens up opportunities of so many different types for researchers and managers of those facilities, technicians, technology developers, software developers, all sorts of people who are involved in research infrastructure work of one sort or another. So it becomes a very diverse and active community of people. And, you know, we really want to foster that, because that's the way quality information about the research infrastructures is spread so widely. I see Andrés has his hand up. So Andrés, you have a question?
No, quiero comentar sobre lo que...
It's not a question, but I will...
Inmaculada y Lelio. Y bueno, sí, recuerdo el workshop al cual se refería Inmaculada, y parte en ese workshop también vimos la presentación de InRoad, donde también parte de lo que yo también presentaba era todo el camino ya recorrido con un proyecto, por ejemplo, que es InRoad, que a nosotros en Latinoamérica nos da muchas luces de cómo también poder avanzar. Y nos pasa mucho en Latinoamérica que creemos que los países, hay países más chicos, más grandes, y cómo entre ellos podemos colaborar, pero uno se da cuenta con otras experiencias que lo mismo les pasa en Europa, que también hay países más grandes, países más chicos, y de qué manera también han tenido que colaborar y que ver de qué manera realizar este tipo de colaboración, viendo las diferencias, las similitudes entre unos y otros. Otro punto que quería también tocar es sobre la pregunta que le tocó a Lelio sobre el financiamiento y tal, y qué tan cercanos estamos en las decisiones o en las necesidades de los científicos base. Y acá yo creo que uno de los problemas que hablo, al menos por Chile, pasa es un tema de financiamiento. O sea, más allá de tal vez estar cercano o no a las necesidades, todo se concursa y las tasas de concursabilidad o de adjudicación son relativamente bajas, y eso también en cierto sentido le da cierta inestabilidad al largo plazo en los diferentes proyectos. Por ejemplo, los nuestros en Chile, los de más largo plazo que tenemos son 10 años, y luego tienen que volver a concursar para volver a tener ese financiamiento, y luego son 10 años más, pero siempre está esa inquietud de si es que voy a tener o no el financiamiento más a largo plazo. Y bueno, con nuestro porcentaje de gasto relacionado con nuestro Producto Interno Bruto, que es bastante bajo, y genera también digamos, puede ser como inquietud de los mismos científicos de no tener suficientes fondos para poder generar lo que están planteando. Ahora, el otro punto que quería también tocar era sobre lo que dejó ahí sobre la mesa Damian, sobre la necesidad o no de infraestructura, y si es que ya tenemos una masa crítica para que esto sea o no necesario. O sea, yo, desde mi opinión personal, y que también lo veo que está muy bien definido, por ejemplo, en el CONACYT de México, es como ellos definieron dos pilares fundamentales para su desarrollo científico, que el primero era el capital humano, ¿verdad? Tener suficientes PhD, suficientes científicos, y para eso tienen un potente programa de desarrollo en becas, en enviar tanto nacionales como extranjeros. Algo similar también tenemos acá desde el 2008, que tenemos un programa muy fuerte de becarios donde se les financia para obtener sus grados tanto en Chile como en el extranjero. Y luego el punto que quería plantear era cómo también ellos definen justamente esto. O sea, tenemos el fuerte de desarrollo en capital, en estudiantes, en investigadores, y luego cómo esto va de la mano con infraestructuras, con el desarrollo, con que esos investigadores quieran volver y tengan lugar donde poder desarrollarse también en el país. Y ahí es donde yo veo que, por un lado, la colaboración es importante, ¿verdad? No es necesario de repente que vuelvan todos al país, pero que sí se generen estos vínculos, y de qué manera nosotros desde el lado de la política podemos favorecer para que estos vínculos se desarrollen, pero también de que hayan infraestructuras, de que hayan centros de investigación, de que hayan lugares para que puedan los investigadores poder desarrollarse luego de que ya se haya generado esta masa crítica dentro de cada uno de los países. Eso quería comentar. Gracias.
Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Andrés. Yo creo que esta cuestión de la masa crítica
I think the European research infrastructures have benefited from this by coming together and being associated as a single community of research infrastructures, or one of a few large communities of research infrastructures. It's given us the momentum and a reputation, if you like, for doing science on a large scale. And that is very motivating for the people that are involved in those research infrastructures. And I think this is one of the things that would be very good in a collaboration establishment between Latin America and Europe. It would bring us together so that together we would be even larger, and you get even more exposure to different ideas, different ways of working, different technologies, different methods, different approaches. And that motivates people. It sort of inspires young scientists to love science. And if the research infrastructures in their home country were developing and were there, they would be more likely to go back and help that to develop further. You know, I mean, I actually come from a country which was reasonably slow to get going on the technological front as well. And moving to Europe just put me in a completely different sphere. It was you know, it was on a global scale rather than a very small national scale. And now it's a bit late for me, obviously, but if I was 20 years younger, then I would be very keen to go back to my home country, which now has become you know, one of the more advanced ones in the world. So I think, you know, those sort of relationships are very important for young scientists to see what is available, but to know that in their own country things are advancing and there will be something really good to go back to, that they can really make a difference in that sphere.
Bueno, voy a hablar en español, que me resulta mucho más fácil. Reconozco el mensaje de Damian. Es cierto que nosotros al final hemos recorrido un camino más largo, hemos empezado antes con esta manera de ver las cosas, de trabajar juntos, pero es cierto que no es solamente un deseo y una intención y una voluntad, que al final está en manos de las decisiones políticas y de los gobiernos que nos gobiernan en cada periodo. Europa tiene una ventaja comparativa con Latinoamérica y es la que mencionas. Nosotros tenemos una unión política y una unión económica que nos permite tomar estas decisiones de manera conjunta, y eso es claro, yo eso lo reconozco. Lo que quería poner también en valor es el valor de las infraestructuras como hub de excelencia alrededor de la cual se mueven muchísimas cosas. Es muy importante tener en cuenta, y hay estudios hechos en los que se demuestra cuál es la capacidad de movilizar la economía en aquella región donde se establece la infraestructura. Cómo esas regiones finalmente se desarrollan atrayendo talento, creando capacidades, recursos humanos industria alrededor de, y economía en todos los sectores alrededor de esas infraestructuras, y es algo también que es importante tener en cuenta. Es por eso también que se intenta que las infraestructuras estén distribuidas a lo largo de los territorios, en el caso a nivel nacional y a nivel europeo, de manera, porque son fundamentales para contribuir también a ese desarrollo. Esas regiones en las que las infraestructuras se localizan son polos de atracción de recursos y de desarrollo económico. En ese sentido, las comunidades, o sea, las regiones, las comunidades autónomas en España, para las regiones en general, están muy interesadas en participar, y yo creo que también es muy importante pensar en aquellos países que podéis ser federales o que tenéis la posibilidad de contar con las comunidades autónomas o con las regiones para la financiación y la promoción de estas infraestructuras, algo que hay que tener en cuenta y algo que considerar. Y decir que las infraestructuras al final se constituyen como empresas. Quiero decir, lo quiero decir porque hay veces que hablamos de proyectos. Es que las infraestructuras no son proyectos, es que las infraestructuras las construimos para que sean sostenibles en el tiempo. Es que las infraestructuras tienen que estar promovidas por los científicos, pero al final tienen que tener un soporte fuerte que las haga estable en el tiempo, que las haga sostenibles en términos de financiación. Por eso estamos dando algunos pasos, pero para poder construir realmente ese espacio común en el que podamos trabajar todos, habrá que, en algún momento, tendremos que empezar a pensar, y ya lo estamos haciendo, intentando identificar cuáles son los recursos disponibles, no en términos de dinero nuevo, sino simplemente reconocer qué recursos hay, qué herramientas tenemos en cada país. Andrés está trabajando muy fuerte ahora mismo en el proyecto ResInfra, en el trabajar en todos esos temas de determinar cuáles son las políticas existentes para financiar estas infraestructuras, y es algo que tenemos que tener en cuenta desde los dos lados y a todos los niveles, institucional, regional, nacional, y regional en el sentido de comunidad autónoma o de región a nivel nacional, y luego regional en el sentido de Latinoamérica y Europa, e intentar aunar esfuerzos. Al final, tenemos que estar convencidos a nivel político del interés que tiene, y tenemos que buscar los medios para poder financiar estas infraestructuras. Si no, al final seguirán siendo proyectos con una viabilidad limitada a la duración del proyecto y a los recursos que ese proyecto les provea, venga el dinero de donde venga, de vuestros gobiernos, de los nuestros, de la Comisión Europea, pero con unos escenarios temporales limitados, que son la situación en la que estamos ahora. Sí, y eso es de lo que nos dimos cuenta en Europa, o en lo que estamos trabajando en Europa. Y finalmente las infraestructuras, la Comisión nos ayuda muchísimo a poner en marcha los proyectos, es un elemento fundamental como incubador, y cubre aspectos muy particulares dentro de lo que es la financiación de las infraestructuras. Pero al final es la voluntad de los países de llevar a cabo estas infraestructuras, construirlas y sobre todo operarlas y mantenerlas en el tiempo, y actualizarlas, porque al final todas estas infraestructuras requieren una obsolescencia bastante importante, o sea que tenemos que estar renovándolas de manera continua, y eso solo se puede hacer si hay unos compromisos decididos y a largo plazo, que se mantengan más allá de los ciclos políticos de las elecciones de nuestros países, para que sean viables.
Thank you very much, Inma. Thank you. So now I
Muchas gracias, Inma. Gracias. Creo que vamos a cerrar ya el debate. Me gustaría compartir un par de comentarios con ustedes.
Someone will have to tell me if they can see my screen.
A ver, díganme cuando se ve mi pantalla, por favor. ¿La vemos?
Now it's on presenter view. You need to switch.
Okay.
Thank you. That's perfect.
Okay, good. So I just wanted to make a few comments at the end of this panel review, if I can just get the slide to move on. Firstly, I'd just like to thank our speakers and panelists for a very good session. I think we covered a lot of topics and there's quite a bit of consensus, but we also raised a few issues that still need addressing. I think some of these I've tried to capture here. I think throughout the symposium, we've heard a number of instances that have referred to the fact that in both the EU and Latin America, there still exists a relatively complex funding model that is very different across national borders. But in the EU, I think the organization that has happened there allows nations to have membership or some degree of ownership in some of the European research infrastructures. And that certainly promotes a joined up sort of thinking, which helps very much in establishing more centralized and aligned funding programs. And of course, the EU itself is a very generous funder that the research infrastructures are able to take advantage of in a number of ways. The EU doesn't fund the research infrastructures directly, but its scientific program certainly has many opportunities for research infrastructures to participate. And in particular, the Horizon Europe program has been framed in such a way that the research infrastructures are quite central to that program. So I think also the EU has made now a strategic decision to work with Latin America to promote collaboration and support research infrastructures. And this is very welcome, and I'm sure it will be it will make things much easier to establish these bilateral relationships through some of the initiatives that they intend to support. We've heard a lot about roadmaps, and it seems that the research infrastructure roadmaps in Latin America, in some cases they are there, but in some cases also they are either in preliminary drafting stages or they don't have them yet. I think the roadmaps have been very successful in Europe. Certainly the S3 roadmap has been a strategic roadmap that has been in development for nearly 20 years now. And that has been very successful in identifying where the research infrastructures are needed, where the demand is from the scientific community, and how these should be organized. And the EU has very generously put an enormous amount of money into developing the research infrastructures along this roadmap, so that now we have a collection of a whole landscape of research infrastructures that cover all of the scientific domains and are able increasingly to work together in a very seamless way. And this is a very powerful resource to have at the Europe-wide level. I think the roadmaps are coming along though in Latin America, and I think the working with EU-LAC ResInfra has helped to develop these. So that is a very positive working collaboration in practice right there. Regional organization and international collaboration may overcome the critical mass needed to justify establishing the research infrastructures. So I think we talked a little bit about this. That individually, some of the nations may not have the critical mass that allows them to engage on an international stage or to develop their own research infrastructures to the scale that would allow the same kind of competitive input, but through regional organization that then allows an international dimension to be joined in, then suddenly you have a completely different scale that allows you to make a significant contribution and to receive, to both receive and to provide services, intellectual input, scientific know-how, and all the things associated with scientific research in a very large arena. There are some things that we still need to manage, and people mentioned legal and ethical issues related to data management. This is not, this is something that we struggle with in Europe as well. In fact, in the SFRI group of research infrastructures, we have a number of fora that come together to discuss these issues and try and establish some common practices and some guidelines for how these need to be dealt with. But it is still problematic in many areas, and again, being a member of a large group of research infrastructures as a consortium of infrastructures gives you the opportunity to compare notes and establish these common practices more easily, because, you know, the idea is that the research infrastructures need to work together seamlessly, and so you need to understand and be able to manage the legal and ethical nuances that are always going to exist from nation to nation, but in such a way that you can collaborate in a very easy way. We've mentioned a little bit about the cooperation programs that we want to establish are all driven from scientific approaches. So they're all bottom up. And Inma, I think, mentioned this when she was saying how the SFRIs were put together, that the SFRI doesn't tell the scientists which research infrastructures they need. It's for the scientists to say what their needs are. And so this is the bottom-up approach, and this is the best approach to establish the research infrastructures in the right way to meet the scientific demand. But you can't establish research infrastructures that are operational without having proper funding programs and political support. And this comes from the top-down approach. And so somewhere you have to meet in the middle. And this is the challenge that it's quite difficult to overcome. And again, in the EU, we've addressed this in lots of ways, and there are now easier ways for research infrastructures and the scientists there to get access to policymakers and decision makers and funders within Europe that help to fund the programs that sustain part of the research infrastructure service provision. So you know, these are just some of the points I think that came out of today. We have come a long way, but there are still some issues to overcome. But you know, I think in general, the enthusiasm to do this has been outstanding on both sides. You know, that I think the EU has obviously made a decision to open up their programs worldwide. And put real support into establishing these collaborations. So I think the future is looking good for that. So I think that's the wrap up for the panel discussion, but I really just wanted to make a few final remarks on the symposium as a whole. It has been a great symposium. I'm thrilled to have been a part of this. I'm really very grateful to all the people involved, particularly grateful to the EU-LAC ResInfra people who co-organized this symposium and really allowed us to develop a program that brought in so much more breadth probably than would have been possible without their contribution. So I suppose my conclusions are, as I've said, the motivation and enthusiasm to foster this cooperation between Latin America and European research infrastructures is notable, and really has been exceptional, I think. There are already many collaborations in place, and they seem to be working really well. These are scientifically based collaborations, but they already seem very mature in many cases. And so there's a really firm basis on which we can start working, I'm sure. The best form of relationships are equal bilateral ones, and so that's what we're aiming for. And as I said, the EU is now ready to support this kind of cooperation by developing bilateral research and innovation roadmaps with some of the priority non-EU countries. And as I've mentioned, the EU has spent a long time implementing a strategic plan to organize research infrastructures in Europe, and they funded their development such that now we have this strong landscape of research infrastructures in all of the domains, in energy, environment, health and food, digital sciences, physical sciences, and social and cultural sciences. And in one way or another, we all work together across those domain boundaries, and that's becoming an increasingly common activity that we in Instruct, who are in this health and food sort of life sciences area, are working with other research infrastructures in environment and energy and digital and social and cultural sciences and physical sciences, in all of them, in fact, in one way or another. And it broadens the scope of what we're able to achieve, and it broadens our horizons as well. The RIs in Europe have become central to the whole framework program, actually. We are now a pillar.
Las infraestructuras de investigación.
Sorry? Okay, so the research infrastructures have become a pillar of the strategic research and innovation agenda in Europe. So we've gone from being a group of individual organizations to being a collective that has a very powerful role in the strategic agenda for addressing scientific challenges in Europe. So from this symposium, I think the key messages that I have taken away from this, and I have to admit these in some cases are observations that have been obvious to me. Latin America already has excellent facilities and is strengthening those facilities regionally, but there are variations at the national level. It has been made clear. But there have been cooperative models proposed that would bring together organized regional research infrastructure hubs with the ability to access complementary research infrastructure capacities in the EU. And in doing that, you get the best of both worlds, in fact, because you are able to extend and strengthen the local capacity that you have and the regional capacity, and also have the benefit of the European research infrastructures that have some complementary capacities, but also there will be this constant exchange of skills, knowledge, scientific interests, technology, and as I said before, this sort of community engagement inspires new researchers, and in countries where there is a problem with brain drain, it can help to counter that, and I think this is a really positive thing. There is probably an impetus to develop a regional strategic roadmap for research infrastructures in the Latin American region, and that would enable an alignment of scientific priorities And that in itself would also enable an easier cooperation. If there was alignment with some scientific priorities or programs, then it's easier to see where the cooperation links could be made. And all of this develops a trust and confidence that cooperation can be achieved. It just makes it so much easier if you know people and you feel you can just talk to them. And if you want something, you're pushing against an open door. And that makes things so much easier and so much more attractive to know that you have friends that you can talk openly to and get some positive answers. So finally, I think it just remains to thank everybody involved in setting up this symposium, the speakers and the panelists, the exhibitors, the people who organize the satellite events, which I think have been great, have been really, really good. The funders, of course, and the funders are shown here, the EU-LAC ResInfra project and the RI-VIS project were both funders of this symposium. But the event organizers as well. I very much enjoyed the virtual tour around the Sirius synchrotron. I thought that was really great. It was nice to do. And also the Wonder networking organizers. I hope you've all I hope you're going to dip into Wonder at some stage before you finish your time with the symposium. To make contact with fellow researchers and people who you would like to connect with. So I think on the whole, that's pretty much all I wanted to say, except that I think the final word is that the future is bright for connectivity between the two of us. I think there will be an active energy for this collaboration and cooperation, and I welcome that. I think that will be a bonus on both sides of the pond, as I've heard it called. However bright the future might be, it still does need some things that are essential. And one of the things that I think is a common problem for all of us is that pretty soon we're going to run out of scale in the digital infrastructure. And we do need to work urgently on improving our digital infrastructure, improving our connectivity, and enabling open access, because those things underpin what we can achieve. Otherwise, I would say we have a very bright future indeed.